Good evening, lecturer, and good evening, everyone. My name is Ray, and I'm from Group 5. That includes Lia, Lee Hein, Hein Hon, Sok Hei, me, and Kim Hap. And today we are going to present to all of you about the chapter 12. And our title is Intercultural Dynamics in the International Company. So let's move on to our contents. Our contents consist of 6 main points, 1 case study, 2 cultural issues, 3 regulatory issues, 4 intercultural business communication, 5 dynamic of culturally diverse teams, and the last one, culture in the context of cooperation strategy. So move on to the first point of our contents, which is case study. On May 7, 1998, Daimler-Benz and Chrysler stunned the world by announcing that they had agreed to merge the two companies. This was the first mega merger of the two big international companies, and it would make Daimler-Chrysler the fifth largest maker of cars and light trucks in the world. The merger was made official on November 17, 1998. On that day, the both CEO from both companies, Mr. Eaton and Mr. Schramm, together rang the opening bell on Wall Street. In Stuttgart, employees celebrated with an American-style party that included turkey. In Auburn Hills, Chrysler employees ate potato salad and sauerkraut, which is the German culture. Each member of the integration team received half a share of the stock in the new company. From the very beginning, the merger required a reconciliation not only of big issues but also of seemingly unimportant points. For example, the committee had to sit down and decide whether a brochure encouraging employees to accept global assignment should have the shape of a globe or a rectangle. The choice of color was another stumbling block. After several months of regular meetings, the committee finally decided on the globe shape, but the color was still unresolved. The negotiations for expatriate pay were tough as well. But finally, the two sides of the company compromised on 1 month's pay. The company offered to pay for housing in the new location and upkeep the expatriate's house in his or her old location, including snow removal and lawn care. Expatriates from both countries would be given 25 days of vacation and a plane trip home for themselves and their family once a year. The company offered to help spouses find employment in the new location. German expatriates in the United States would get Chrysler automobiles and at discount rates, and American expatriates in Germany would get Mercedes vehicles at discount rates as well. And less than 2 years after the merger, the company bought a controlling share of Mitsubishi. Now there were 3 corporations and 3 national cultures involved. Chrysler had an unsuccessful joint venture with Mitsubishi in 1980, when together they built an automobile assembly plant in Normal, Illinois. Ultimately, the joint venture was dissolved. But in the new formation, Chrysler was aligned with the majority merger partner, Daimler. However, the earlier relationship between Chrysler and Mitsubishi did not seem to affect the ties to Daimler-Chrysler. Mitsubishi was in trouble when Daimler-Chrysler acquired the majority interest. It had lost money in 2000 century, and the Japanese were deeply unhappy at the measures taken by Daimler Chrysler to bring it back to profitable figures, including firing members of the top executives at Mitsubishi. Schramm and Eaton had emphasized the potential saving and economy of scale that the merger of Daimler and Chrysler would create. On that expectation, the stock rose to a high of $108 when reports of culture clashes between Auburn Hills and Stuttgart began to emerge. Sales problems and production issues made headlines, and the stock dropped to a low of $26. Since then, the road for the merger had been rather bumpy. And at the same time, Mitsubishi Motors ran into major problems as well. The company had covered up defects in its car over several years. Quality problems led to financial problems, and the question was whether Daimler Chrysler would support Mitsubishi financially. This would be a further drag on the profitability of Daimler Chrysler. Mitsubishi Motors is one company in the Mitsubishi Keiretsu, a conglomerate of companies that traditionally would help each other in case of problems. The companies composing the Mitsubishi Keiretsu are Mitsubishi Bank, Mitsubishi Corporation, Kirin Brewery, Mitsubishi Rayon, Mitsubishi Electric, Mitsubishi Heavy Industry, and Mitsubishi Motors. Traditionally, all companies in the Keiretsu would do business with each other whenever possible. Each Keiretsu has a bank at its center, and all companies in the Keiretsu use the bank for their financial and the banking needs. The question was whether the Mitsubishi Keiretsu would bail out a company that was controlled by a foreign firm. When Daimler Chrysler bought a controlling share of Mitsubishi Motors, this was seen as proof that traditional Keiretsu was breaking apart. As the crisis deepened in the spring of 2004, Daimler Chrysler decided not to put more money into Mitsubishi Motors. Ultimately, the Keiretsu followed tradition and bailed out the Mitsubishi Motors. As a result, Daimler Chrysler shares in Mitsubishi Motors fell to 22%. In November 2005, Daimler Chrysler sold its remaining share of Mitsubishi. And for 2005, Daimler Chrysler posted an 80% rise in income, but most of that came from the financial service area of the company rather than the production side. While Chrysler announced a profit for 2005, sales slumped as high gasoline price scares a buyer away from trucks and the SUVs. The Mercedes division posted a loss of €505 million for 2005, its first annual loss in over 10 years. In addition, Mercedes announced a layoff for 8,500 employees and a restructuring of the unprofitable Smart division. At the end of 2005, Schramm, the CEO of Daimler Chrysler, announced that would step down, and the board of directors had voiced doubt about Schramm's continuing effectiveness. Zech, who had turned Chrysler around, followed Schramm as the new CEO. In March 2006, the stock traded at $46, up from the low of $26, but only a shadow of the height of $108 at the excitement over the merger. And this is the end of my part. So now I would like to hand the stage to my next teammate. Thank you.
Good evening, teacher, and good evening, everyone. Now I would like to continue the presentation on the first part, which is a cultural issue in the Daimler-Cycler merger. Before going straight to the point, I would like to brief you two company history, which is the first one is the history of Cycler. Cycler started when Maxwell Motor became a Cycler Corp in 1925 with a Cycler the president. During World War II, Cycler produced tank and combat vehicles. And after the war, Cycler became the best known for big powerful car. But with the Arab oil embargo in 1970s, it ran into the problem. Consumer wanted a small fuel efficient car, and Cycler could not deliver. Lee Iacocca became a president of Cycler in 1978 when the company faced a bankruptcy. Iacocca was able to secure federal loan guarantee and pay off all loan in 1980. Cycler and Mitsubishi Motors started a joint venture in the mid-1980s under the name Diamond Star Motors. Cooperate with the Mitsubishi ended in 1991, and Iacocca stepped down in 1992. Cycler, the smallest of the big three car companies, was best known for its creativity and ability to overcome obstacles. Under the Aston Lee Iacocca's successor, Cycler made a significant progress in quality and efficiency, and the company became the world leader in profitability per vehicle. Now let's on to the second history. Is the history of Daimler-Benz. Daimler and Benz merged in 1926 to become a Daimler-Benz AG. The company is the best known for the Mercedes car. During World War II, Daimler-Benz became a leader aim maker for Hitler, and it used slave labor during that time. In the 1990s, the company paid huge sum money as the compensation and published a book about its role in World War II. In 1997, it has a revenue for $70 billion. It employs 300,000 workers worldwide. More than two-thirds of its revenue come from outside Germany, and in the 1990s, the company built plants in United States and France. In the 1980s, Reuter, the CEO, started on the path of diversification of Ford and went back to Daimler-Benz core business, luxury car and big trucks. Let's move on to the cultural issue in the Daimler-Cycler merger. There are many issues related, but today I would like to tell you on some issues such as preparing and training. It was one thing to announce that the merger, it was the entirely different things to make the merger work. For example, 3 international accounting firms, 4 investment banks, and 6 corporate law firms partnership work on the merger. Clearly, both sides focus on financial, regulatory, legal, and business issues. As we will see, the issue play a major role. However, the mergers almost was detailed over the culture issue. In order to deal with the issue, the member received some intercultural training, but they complained that the training was not very helpful and got stuck in stereotypes. For example, in German, was told that American was superficial and that an invitation does not mean anything. When a German executive came to Urban Hills, he therefore booked a hotel room, even though his American counterpart had invited him to stay at his house. He was very surprised that American not only picked him up personally at the airport, but took him to his home. The American has been told that Germans are stiff and that from and politeness, and they were told that never greet a German with your hand in your pocket if you want to be taken seriously. When the American with the German in sixth grade, they were surprised that quite a few of Germans had their hand in their pocket. It seems that most of the training focused on the cultural stereotype and aspects that can be observed rather than the underlying reason of behaviors. The resulting stereotype did not foster a systematic approach to the studying and observing other culture. Both German and American employees of Daimler Cycle were frustrated because they did not learn why German or American behave as they do. Since many employees from the other side did not behave as the trainer had said they would, both American and German concluded that the training was not helpful. However, effective culture training could have helped them understand the several business and management practices that slow their merger process. Another point is attitude toward management. There were numerous cultural differences that the training did not address at all. The Germans came to meet a thick folder and detailed agenda. They prepare very detailed minutes of every meeting, whereas the Americans prefer free-flowing discussion and one agenda as a general guideline. The German wanted detailed summary of the previous meeting at the beginning of every section. The American want none of that. After studying the role of culture in the international business communication, you know that the Germany attitude toward the meeting and agenda is related to a dislike of uncertainty. Agenda provide order and minimize the risk that something unexpected will happen. Americans, who are generally more willing to accept uncertainty, prefer a more flexible approach. As the case at the beginning of the chapter pointed out that discussion was made to make English our official company language. The American who would deal with German on the regular basis was realized because there was no need to learn the German language. However, when they went to their first meeting, they were surprised. During the official meeting, everyone speak English. However, as soon as the meeting was officially over, all of the Germans switched to German. Americans did not understand the word and decided a few German lessons may be helpful after all. The American was worried that the German would discuss the important point in German and leave the American out of the process of the discussion. The German, otherwise the German who speak very good English, nevertheless was worried that their English may not be good enough to get all the meaning of the language. Last but not least, the attitude toward compensation. In the summer of 1998, the German magazine ran into the article comparing the pay of Daimler employees and that of the Cycler employees. The article showed the picture of the houses of employees and talk about their vacations, hobbies, and work schedules. It also compared the pay of two supervisors, both before and after taxes. The German employee know that they was among the highest paid workers in the world. There was some fear that the merger would have a negative impact on German pay. By showing that the two supervisors in the story had comparable pay package, The article helped reduce or eliminate that concern. It was interesting to note, however, the German and American supervisor had very different priority of spending their money. The American employees spent much of their money on his house, garden, and furnishings. The American employee also had a nice house, but spent most of his disposable income on short vacation and eating out. The difference in pay at the employee and supervisor level may not have been that great. However, it was not true that expatriate levels. Expatriate package therefore was small by American standard. It points out that expatriate compensation became a big issue in the merger process. Ultimately, both sides give a little. The attitude toward expatriate pay speak volume about attitude toward the international business. And that's all for my part. I would like to give a floor to my teammate.
Thank you, Sis Dia. Now let's move on to the regulation issues. Because of the government regulation, the new company was incorporated in Germany, and there were some unintended consequences. Since the merger operation of both companies were moved to Germany, the US Standard Poor 500 no longer listed the company. The Standard & Poor 500, or simply the S&P 500, is a free-float weighted measurement stock market, indeed of 500 of the largest companies listed on the stock exchange in the United States. Another issue is about stock market were purchased in local currency. Daimler Chrysler stock was listed on the 12 international stock markets after the merger, becoming the first truly international stock. It was traded around the world in local currency rather than as repository receipt. The problem is that when traded as repository receipt, shares are deposited in the bank and then dollar-denominated are issued against them. The rate of currency fluctuation therefore will play a role in trading. With trading of common share in the local currency, the conversion cost can be avoided. The share can be traded at 12 different stock markets without incurring conversion costs. The different perspective of stock market. In German law, they don't really care about stock market because they focus on the long run, while the Americans do the opposite. There were one time when Schwab asked the board members of Daimler what the Daimler stock price was. Only one member gave an answer, and his estimate was not close to the actual price, and the other members didn't even take a guess. In American context, it would be really irresponsible for a board member not to have the latest information of your own stock price. The last issue is report and timing. Germany requires 2 financial reports a year, whereas the United States requires 4 times quarterly reports each year on a timely basis. The timing of report also creates a problem as well. For example, Stuttgart would make an announcement in the morning when it is still night in the United States. By the time the Americans got the information, it was old news already. Move on to the next part, which is about reports on the merger. In this part, we will see the attitude toward the merger over time based on the media. In 1998, when the merger just happened, the view of the merger were positive. There were only some concern about taking over by Chrysler by Daimler and major culture clash, but most of those articles talk in general, not giving the specific. In 1999, the concern became big problems. The reports were critical of slow speed of integration. For example, it took 25% out of 300 managers' time to work out the details of the merger, meaning that those managers didn't spend their time producing and selling cars. Schwab came under criticism as well. He was seen as tyrannical and dictatorial by the American public and by the Chrysler employee in Detroit, where he was firing executives at Chrysler to gain complete control. By October 1999, the board of managers had 8 Germans and 5 Americans. In 2000, the stock market had dropped from a high of $108 to $45. Chrysler had run into serious problems. 60% of the value of stock had been wiped out since its high. Eaton had left before his 3 years as co-CEO were up, and his replacement, Holden, was fired by Schwab, who sent his own man, Zach, to Auburn Hill in the United States. Critics talk about the cultural drama of selling an American icon to dictatorial and power-hungry Germans. When Zech took the place, he asked the supplier to lower their price, and the supplier was not happy about it. Gradually, there was a realization that Chrysler's problems were not all strap making. The company had been had for the trouble before the merger. Up to this point, Strap had been criticized for not being decisive enough and not moving fast enough. The merger had been mismanaged, and the intercultural communication was disastrous. The conclusion at the end of 2000 was the merger had failed miserably, there were no synergy, and that the culture was too difficult to be able to work together. In 2001, while Daimler Chrysler was still trying to merge as one company, Strap bought a controlling share of 34% of Mitsubishi. After buying it, Mitsubishi reported that 750 million US dollar in pre-tax loss on sale of 31 billion US dollar in year 2000. Mitsubishi sales had dropped 70% in the first part of the year because of its quality problems. After Strap had known about the problem of the company, he sent Agrod to Japan to reverse the fortune of Mitsubishi. Agrod was known as ruthless in laying off workers and reorganizing the company. The Japanese, aware of his tough start, were planning not to take any order from the German. In March 2001, Agrod replaced 5 Japanese top executives with Germans. The Japanese were stunned, and particularly since 4 of the Germans were under 40 years of age. He then decided to cut costs, lay off 9,500 workers, sever ties with one-third of the suppliers, and reduce the number of automobiles on the production line. In 2002, Agrod removed Sinop as the CEO of Mitsubishi and took the job himself. In the same month, the company announced that Mitsubishi had returned to profitability and made a steady progress in its turnaround effort, surpassed the target set for cost reduction. After this issue was resolved, the Japanese had made reaction about this. Some saw the changes as a violation of fundamental cultural values that value the lifetime employment and seniority. Others saw the changes as necessary if the Japanese company was to survive. Most of the Japanese agree that the changes could not have been made by a Japanese manager. In conclusion, when the merger of Daimler and Chrysler was first announced, newspaper, magazine, television, and radio ran numerous stories about this new company. Since then, the news had become much quieter. Today, the story no longer celebrates a sexy global merger, but concentrates more on the problem. The stock market was pointed out in the opening case has been a roller coaster. After an all-time high of $108, it slumped low of $26 and finally recovered to $46 in 2006. Some manufacturing processes in Daimler Chrysler have merged successfully, and production managers from the two companies are more comfortable with each other, understand and speak the same language, and beat each other's strengths. So this is the end of my part. The next part, Sok-Heng will continue on intercultural business communication as a strategy tool for success. Thank you.
Good evening, lecturer, and good evening, everybody. And thanks, Chuhab, for your presentations. Let's now move on to another point, which is intercultural business communication as a strategic tool for success. Well, at this point, we're gonna talk about a case study, which is demonstrate two big companies in the automobile industry, which are Daimler from Germany and Chrysler from United States of the America, having a purpose of merging with each other in order to expand their business to the international market. Well, as the Daimler and Chrysler case illustrated, we can see that both companies brought their respective corporate culture, which are influenced by their national culture. So the two corporate culture also embed in culture of automobile industry. But the biggest task is to bridge the culture gap so that the work team can focus on the business task. Well, we can see that from the case study, we can see that all the international companies face the cultural issues, particularly in merger and joint venture. So in order to be on the potential synergize of cultural diversity, the company needs to, for the first thing they need to create the awareness of the process of intercultural business communications and understand the way to communicate about the culture and to communicate by using the culture. The second point is develop. So they have to develop an understanding of the dynamic of culturally diverse group. Yep, and the third point is place. So they have to place the communication process and the dynamic of diverse team in the context. Okay, so let's now move on to another point, which is the process of intercultural business communication. Okay, so in this process, there are three parts, which is illustrated in the picture. So there are business strategy, intercultural strategy, and cooperation strategy, or you can call it communication strategy. So in each circle, there are lists of variables which could be influenced to the word in each circle. So those variables is not complete yet, so you may think of another aspects that could influence those circle, but these variables are the major one. So the company may have influence over by some of those aspects, and whereas others are beyond its control. So let's go with the first circle, that is business strategy. So for example, for the business strategy in the intercultural process, in the process of intercultural business communication, like there are national law concerning merger, government regulation concerning the list of foreign company and stocks, and reporting regulation affect the business strategy, but are beyond the direct influence of company. The company has to understand the rule and regulation to avoid violating them, but it cannot change them. So for our case study, like the Daimler and Chrysler had to comply with the German reporting rule, even if the Americans investor want more information, and the company is not bound by the request. So the Daimler may agree that for quarterly report are good for investor relation, but may decide that two report provide all necessary information. Then another aspect like competition to the firm face and the position of the product could influence the particular business strategy of company too. For example, in this, like a Daimler want to get a foothold in the broader automobile market in addition to the luxury market, and it hoped to do that by joining with a company like Chrysler. Scram furthermore hope that the broader product line with lower cost product would have the company expansion into Asia. So the Eaton saw the international expansion as a way to stay competitive, and a Daimler offered an opportunity for Chrysler to become a player in Europe. So with the Daimler high quality products that appeal to the luxury market. Okay, let's move on to another circle, which is intercultural strategy. So in this intercultural strategy, we mainly focus about culture thing. So in the picture, we list a 10 variable that you have already learned about, like cultural attitude relating to hierarchy, chain, race, and individual versus the group, among many the other. So at the time of the merger of our case study, so both company seem to be in a good sound of financial positions, but however, we notice that the German and the American have a different culture priority. So the culture different find expression in the role of rule and formality and view on risk and uncertainty, the promotions of women and communication style. So in addition to national culture, there are other cultural variables such as corporate culture and professional culture too. So different positions may have a different culture. For example, accountants have a different culture than do human resource or HR manager. So to some extent, those culture overlap, but they are also distinct. Okay, let's move on to the third circle, which is corporate strategy or communication strategy. So in the dynamic of communication in the company are shaped by the people in the firm. So the manager could develop a policy and standard on corporate communication, but within the framework, individual can develop their own style preference as long as they stay within the corporate guideline. So in the Daimler and Chrysler situation, the member of the integration team were not allowed to communication with anybody outside the teams, and communication between teams were heavily regulated as well. So confidentiality was seen as crucial so that the team member would not be influenced by outside pressure group. However, outside the specific issue of the merger process, both American and German companies are more transparent than Japanese company. So American company are the most transparent. Legislation enforce rule on corporation reporting and communication with all stakeholders. Okay, so the communication process is dispatched in the model illustrated in the picture, where identify a sender, a message, and a receiver of the message. And a feedback loop indicates that the communication is an interactive two-way process. However, the picture does not provide the detail of the complexity of the relationship between people, business, and culture. So it merely shows that they are the least two parties involved. So from our case of the merger of Daimler and Chrysler, the picture should show that the representative from the Daimler and Chrysler discuss the merger. However, there is nothing in the traditional model that specifically relate to the process, to the business, or the deal with the group dynamic. So back to the chapter 1, we discussed the role of perception and schemata in communication. Since we cannot enter the mind of persons we are communicating with, we ultimately communicate with our schemata and the persons. Now imagine that in this process involving not just 2 people but a group of 10 people who all bring their own culture to the business at the hand, so that the potential conflict between reality and perception is multiplied, and the approach to solving conflict establish goal and collecting information, to name just a few regular business tasks, combined to become a huge endeavor. So in the case of Daimler and Chrysler situation become even more difficult because the player of the intercultural integration teams are expected to step outside their own cultural orientation and create a new company with a new culture that fit into both company and American national culture. As in the process of discussion of Daimler and Chrysler case, there are potential of starting a new culture too, and they were hoping to take something from both environments and create something new. However, they need to understand how business function on the other country, and they need to understand relationship between culture and business, and needed to understand the dynamic of communication in both culture. So as the 3 variables interact and a new construct and intercultural business communication strategy emerge, that means that in intercultural business communication, we must be aware of the role of each circle. So at the Daimler and Chrysler case, for example, the participant in the merger negotiation had to look at the strategic goal of the 2 companies and the cultural environment of both companies and the communication practice of both companies. So building upon that background, they then could start to develop an intercultural strategy to achieve the goal of merger. Well, in the beginnings of the merging process, the differences almost derailed, but it took time to see the synergies that could result from the cooperation. However, there are a changing of work program between both companies by both directors from each organization go to observe each other company. So my part end here. Thank you for listening to my part. So I will now hand the stage to my team member and present you another point. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So now I would like to continue to another part of the presentation, which is about the dynamics of culturally diverse teams.
So in the era of globalization, most people work in an environment of cultural diversities, and we also believe that the diverse team make better decisions than do homogeneous teams. But to get those consequences, it is so challenging for the culturally diverse team to work as one. So, to what we all can see, people from different cultures have different approach to make decisions, solving problem, and negotiating deal. They view the world differently, just like in the case of Daimler Chrysler, who were either German or American, and they face many problems already. To harness the potential of culturally diverse groups, we need to spend time developing those groups by creating cultural awareness, understanding, and respect. So we are going to know the process, just like our real life experience. When we have group projects or assignment, the group do not become productive automatically for the first time, and it really takes time to understand each other, just like in the case of Daimler Chrysler, that took many months for the team to develop approaches for expatriation strategies. Even though it takes long time since the mergers, we can see that the two sides of diverse culture are not one cohesive unit, which means they are getting closer, but they don't speak with one voice. So some people in the company complain that they are not working fast enough, and some complain that they are not talking enough care about the important detail. So in the team building process, we can learn that it's not always productive. From that point of view, bringing together culturally diverse team take attention away from the actual business task. And generally, most managers who haven't received training in developing culturally diverse in effective communications can see that the culture is the root of the business problem. For example, in the Daimler Chrysler case, the German manager thought that an American company could be run as the same way as a German company, and the Chrysler people thought that they certainly could not learn anything from the foreign manager. So this is the problem, that they didn't understand about cultural differences, and they end up claiming they were right instead. With this view, a manager usually assemble a team and give a charge to the team. A manager expects the team to focus on the task at hand and not get it personal. The belief here is that they want a rational and analytical discussion with culturally value-free will provide the best results. So in the culturally diverse team, we can identify three teams such as the destroyer teams, equalizer teams, and the creator teams. For the destroyer team, they believe that nothing is possible and there is no way to cooperate with the teams. The equalizer team are more difficult to identify because everything they do seem to go according to the schedules and plan, but their decisions come too fast since they do not bear on the unique point of view. They just get the flow of it. For the creator team, they take time to work through their differences in a time-consuming process, and their work as a result are the best. This creator team is like the authors Stefanos and Masneskis, who have 5 stages in building up culturally diverse team. So there are 5 stages in here, such as creating self-awareness of one's own cultures and personal style, and then mapping cultural differences. And the next is to bridging gap and identifying potential synergies, and then developing cultural strategy for specific business tasks. And the last one is the assessing results. All right, so for the first step, which is about the creating self-awareness. At the beginning, team members need to become aware of their own cultural priorities. Since a culture is normal to a native of that culture, a few people consciously develop critical self-understanding. So we need to analyze our cultural priorities first, what we value the most. However, a lack of self-awareness can hinder solid understandings of the cultural priorities of the other group members. We get lost with them. So, conscious self-awareness help identify and overcome one self-reference criterions in which a person judges somebody else on the basis of his or her own cultural priorities. For example, in the Daimler-Chrysler case, the member would develop a conscious understanding of their own culture by asking the question like, what does it mean to be a manager at Chrysler? What are the values of managers? How do my personal value fit into this corporate setting? What is important to me, or how do we make decisions? So after creating self-awareness, we move on to the next step, which is mapping the difference. In this second stage, group members can identify their differences. So they can plot the intensities of their cultural priorities on a piece of paper and compare the orientations of the various group members. So throughout the different values of them, they need to find a possible value as one in the majority vote. For example, one team member may value hierarchy, whereas another group member may dislike hierarchy very strongly. So it really helpful if each team member enter his or her value positions on the chart. In this chart, they can possibly add more questions to ask in the mapping diagram, which are most relevant to the task at hand. So in this diagram, we can see the rating from 1 to 10 according how much the member values it, so that we can see their priorities and differences among the team members. Yes, so the next step is about the bridging gaps and identifying synergies. So after we have understood each other and mapped the differences already, group members are already to bring the gaps in this stage. We can build the cultural synergies and also be able to develop strength that various culture represents. In the Daimler-Chrysler case, the team were verbalizing their differences and acknowledge them publicly at this stage. For example, like both sides of them totally agrees or understand that they view the expatriation differently. At Daimler's, expatriation was a regular step in career advancements, but at Chrysler, it's seen as a special assignment. So, in the beginning of the merger process, they had gone through many discussions about technologies and platform. They actually know where the issues are, but they couldn't see the approaches. Management or sharing information were different, and they just pretend that there were no problem at all. So, if they acknowledge the differences earlier, they would fix the problem faster and become one great team. For the next step is about developing the strategy. So at this stage, team members are ready to integrate their knowledge, approaches, and background, and also develop an intercultural business communication strategy that will build on the strengths of the member and is aligned with organizational strategies and goals. So team member at Daimler Chrysler at this stage would develop a detailed strategy for cooperation and integration. Ideally, the team now speak with one voice, but only after all the differences have been explored and assessed, because the viewpoints on sharing technology were different. They would have developed a strategy for determined area for cooperation and integration, and also develop specific plan for research and goal. For example, they could have decided to develop a timeline for evaluating proposal or for sharing technology and evaluating joint research projects. And the very last stage of developing culturally diverse team is the assessing result. So it is the manager who form the group, assesses the results, and also note down the process knowledge that has been gained. It store that knowledge to have it ready for the future use. In Demlukis's case, the manager went through this process. They learn from the past experiences and were able to anticipate responses from the other side. Over time, the process will be less time consuming, but it should never be automatic. If it is become automatic, there would be a great possible dangers of equalizing rather than maximizing the potentials. So this is the end of my part. I would like to hand the stage to Hun.
Thank you, Leheng, for your presentation. And now let's move on to my part, culture in context of cooperate strategy. After examining the process of creating a virtual culturally diverse team, we had to put it into the practice, having a specific business goal with to bring two different companies together and shape them into one unit. We had to know and practice the intercultural team and business communication strategy. There are three processes of this strategy. First of all, the process involving one diverse team in one company. The strategy separate activity into discrete steps. However, some of the steps can occur simultaneously before multicultural group can start work together. First, we need to develop the business strategy to make the specific strategy and define the organization goal to which the multicultural group can start work together for the organization. The next step is organization need to identify the participant skills so they can work on their tasks effectively and efficiently. Then the manager need to select the participant based on their skill to select the best participant for the job and the assigning task. This process is simplified insofar as it shows only one culturally diverse group in one company. For example, marketing develop many different marketing strategies to ensure that the diverse market has input the organization upon the employee from various of the cultural background to the team so they can all work together towards the same goal. And the second step is the process involving two companies. When two companies enter negotiation as buyer or seller of goods, they work together for specific purpose but remain distinctly separate company. The two sides of the company come together for one particular project, but the two company has no plan to unite the company. The two sides evaluate their international interact, gain their own goal and objective as one company decide that the contact with other company would not be in their interest and discontinue the talk. However, the relationship may be formed and go on for many years as the company may use same supply for a long period. For example, most international companies work together with a local business, but other international firms but keep their own identity. When two companies decide to join together, they explore possibility for the closer cooperation, but they still evaluate any proposal on the bias of their own goal. When two distinct company plan to come together, they put their different background players within and between the group to see how the merger would fit into each company's strategy. So the team from both sides of the company would come together and provide each other a feedback. Once they are formed, one company with culturally diverse team would cooperate with each other successfully. Finally, the process after the merger. After the merger has been agreed on, it become more important because both sides had to work together. They could not walk away from each other. Moreover, intercultural communication was no longer on isolation or current. The culturally diverse team don't represent different companies but different entities within the same company. As a result, with different players and groups strive to achieve the same corporate goal. For example, successful international companies able to build on the cultural diversity of their employees. As a result, they build strong corporate culture. And now let's move on to applying your cultural knowledge to business strategy. After learning and understanding cultural priority can help you communicate and make international business more productive. And understanding of relationship between effective intercultural business communication and the dynamics of culturally diverse group and overall business strategy will help you become a player in an exciting global environment. This is the end of our presentation, and thank you for your listening and your attention. If you have any question, feel free to ask. Thank you.